Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about the big news out of Washington, D.C., how a House Ethics Panel has officially said there's substantial evidence to show that Representative George Santos lied and broke the law. We'll also share with you the latest developments of his re-election campaign. Also, we're going to talk about making houses affordable again. We're going to be checking in with the Associate Director for Communication for the Right to the City Alliance organization to talk about the disparity. Also, the mother of the 60-year-old shooter in Virginia has been officially sentenced. Wait till you hear the dynamics of this developing story. We'll talk a little bit about that. And later on, evening the playing field for Black entrepreneurs. So that's all that's happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. And big shout out to my online culture crew that's checking in from around the country. I see my brother, Pastor Damon Blissett, is in the building. Brother Damon, thank you so much. Brother Damon's keeping me up to date, man, sending these stories. He was the one that told me about Representative Santos. As I was looking, he sent me the story, so I appreciate you, big brother, for keeping us up to date on everything. Folks, you could definitely be a part of the conversation as we're streaming live on a number of different platforms. First and foremost, our home platform of blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure you go to our website today, download the app for free, follow us on social media, and most importantly, please give something to help power us in this digital movement. Go to blackstarnetwork.com for more information. Also, we're streaming live on Amazon News, on your Fire TV, Amazon Prime Video. You can find us there on the Prime Video app under Live TV and News. Also, you can find us on Amazon.com under Prime Video, Live TV, the News. So check us out there. We're also on Freevee, where you can find us on now under News. So definitely check us out there, as well as Plex TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All right, folks, let's jump right into it as I see my crew is lining up here. Conscious Thought, good afternoon. Good to see you, dear brother. Cindy D, hello, Cindy. Good to connect with you once again. And Tiana, thank you so much for checking in. Folks, look, let's talk a little bit. I just want to give you a brief update of this developing story, something that I don't think a lot of us are truly surprised about, but it is good to hear that there's some accountability happening. And this is coming out, of course, Washington, D.C., as Representative George Santos of New York, the embattled Republican representative out of New York, has been, is a couple of things happened. One is that it has been made official by the House panel that is investigating him that indeed there is, quote unquote, substantial evidence to show that he broke the law, folks. Substantial. Let me share with you this latest from NBC News. It is a report that is 56 pages long, but the ethics subcommittee that was tasked with investigating Representative George Santos found, quote, a complex web of unlawful activity involving Representative Santos' campaign, personal and business finances. Representative Santos sought to fraudulently exploit every aspect of his House candidacy for his own personal financial profit. He blatantly stole, this is second paragraph here, he blatantly stole from his campaign. He deceived donors into providing what they thought were contributions to his campaign, but were in fact payments for his personal benefit. He reported fictitious loans to his political committees to induce donors and party committees to make further contributions to his campaign, and then diverted more campaign money to himself as purported repayments of those fictitious loans. And he used his connections to high-value donors and other political campaigns to enrich himself, according to the report. And he sustained all of this through a constant series of lies to his constituents, donors, and staff about his background and experience. Wow. Wow. Now, just as that news broke, that announcement was made a few minutes later, Representative George Santos, who was on who was actually considering running again for the role of congressman for his constituents in New York. He wasn't even backing down. But after such a scathing and damning report coming out of the House Ethics Committee, guess what? He said, yeah, no. He posted on X, formerly known as Twitter. He said, I will continue. Take a look at this. He said, I will continue on my mission to serve my constituents up until I am allowed. I will, however, not be seeking reelection for a second term in 2024, as my family deserves better than to be under the gun from the press all the time. Come on now, representative. Come on, congressman. Come on. No, 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 no. Your family is under the gun of the press all the time because of you lied. You lied. You lied about who you are. You lied about where you came from. You lied about all of your business dealings. You lied about your political dealings. You lied. You are a pathological liar. But more importantly, you weren't thinking about your family. You weren't thinking about your family at that time. If that money train, that gravy train was still going, you would not be talking about your family. But you got caught up in the lie, so now you blaming it on the press. I don't know if he will ever come to the reality of the things that he's done in this whole process, but he lied. He definitely lied. And here's the thing. The big part about this, folks, as we take our first pause, the big part about this is the constituents of his area, of his district. What do they think? How will they move forward? Now, we already know that the New York Republicans wanted to have Santos ousted from Congress. They were trying to do that. When that vote came down to it, it was still they didn't get enough votes from the Republican side to push him out of Congress. But now this report might be the very thing that kicks him out of Congress, y'all. And the constituents. And the man had to get all this far. Matter of fact, after this point, I don't even know why he's even talking about finishing his term. He should be, I mean, there should be something, some sort of punishment, not waiting until next year for that to happen, because he can still create more harm than good over the next couple of months. Tiana, you said, damn. He was just scamming and jamming around DC. Scamming and jamming, Tiana. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, he was scamming and jamming a lot. A lot. And guess what? When you scam and jam the way he does, it's not even about him as the person, as the individual. It's about how it erodes the trust that we all have in our government, in democracy. It erodes the trust. It makes things even worse. So this is not just about him as the individual or even his family and the embarrassment he's caused his family. It's that when you get to that certain point, when you are in a position of power, influence, political leadership, and you are a representative of the people in the system that is supposed to be for the people, and you're scamming and jamming the way he did and has been doing, then guess what? It takes away faith that people have in the government. And Lord knows we don't need more people to feel faithless about this government as we already are confronting so many challenges. So this is not just about him by himself, but it's the fact that many of us have been asking the question, how was he able to get this far in the first place? After the lies about where he went to school and all of that other stuff started to come out, but he still was able to push forward. And was so arrogant to say, I'm gonna still run for the next term. So the lies caught up with you, sir. The lies caught up with you. All right, look, I gotta take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about making housing affordable again. And we're gonna talk to one representative from the group Right to the City Alliance and talk about the work that they're doing and more importantly, the impact that housing disparity is making on the American people and what we can do, especially going into this election cycle. So stay with us. That conversation is up next right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness, and what happens in Black culture. We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money make this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Let's talk about housing. And this is something that's becoming more and more near and dear to me, especially living out here in Los Angeles, because we are seeing the real effects. And I remember when we just had this conversation about homelessness just a couple of days ago here on the show, many of you expressed very, very serious concerns about where we are. And housing in this country is rapidly becoming one of the top issues in states across this country, where people are starting to complain. They're starting to put in policy around rent control. They're starting to scrutinize banks for loans. Housing is becoming a real problem in America. So today, we wanted to at least have a conversation talking about what is being done to address this housing crisis that we find ourselves in. So I am very happy to introduce our first guest, Kamal Walton, who serves as the Associate Director for Communications for the organization Right to the City Alliance. And RTTC is a national alliance of more than 90 community-based racial, economic, gender, and environmental justice organizations building democratic, just, and sustainable communities by growing grassroots power to halt gentrification and displacement. So we want to welcome to the airwaves of The Culture here on the Black Star Network, Kamal Walton, who serves as the Associate Director for Communications at Right to the City Alliance and is a queer, gender nonconforming abolitionist. Kamal, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm excited anytime to talk about housing with whoever, so I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you. I truly appreciate it. All right, first and foremost, Kamal, let's talk about this current landscape of the housing issue in this country. We know that Right to the City Alliance is doing some work, really doing everything very grassroots, right? Trying to get people interested. But this is it just the grassroots effort? Because and I don't know too much about housing. I'm actually learning more and more, especially living out here in California. But I'm learning that there are so many different parts and pieces to this crisis, right? And I don't know, Kamal, but I'm getting to that place where, or I'm probably am already at that place to keep it real with you. It's like now, I'm not sure if the is the corporate America or if it's government, like the institutions, even the financial institutions, the lenders and the banks, do they just not have the will? They just don't want to do this? Or is it because of all of these other issues? Like, why is housing such a problem in this country, especially a country that boasts it has we are number one in so many other places, which is not true. Which is not true, but we are suffering. People are literally living on the streets in cities across this country. Why is that?
Well, what I'll start off with is Right to the City actually began in 2008, 2007, 2008, around the time of the foreclosure crisis. And in that time where we're at now in 2023, the majority of our member organizations are actually focused on renters. And part of the reason why that has happened is because in the foreclosure crisis and with like future projections and things that happen, a lot of corporate landlords and developers realized that there was a lot more money in multiple unit like rental homes instead of
Yeah,
just selling homes full out, because you're able to push people out if they can't pay. You can hike up the rent way more easily. It's far less of a process to evict someone. Um, and so now we've seen that shift on the housing front, and the root of the things is based on the fact that people view housing as a tool to extract as much money and resources as possible from people, as opposed to housing being a place of like safety, of stability, of healing, of health. And we saw that a lot during the pandemic when the first step was to shelter in place and people didn't even have places to go. Um, and so it is a combined interest of a lot of different people, including developers, corporate landlords, the
yeah,
bank, and all of those folks have really strong lobbies as well. So they are lobbying in DC, across every city and state where we have members that are doing work to push back against policies that would help to stabilize folks in not just their homes but also the apartments where they live, whether it's single family units, big apartment buildings. They have really strong lobbies. They also make a lot of contributions to both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, to ensure that their interests will be prioritized no matter who's in office. And so these are the reasons why Right to the City started bringing together local organizations from across the country, folks who are doing work on community land trust, on cooperative housing, building out tenant unions to fight for folks' rights. Because we see that our opposition, the developers, the banks, the folks who aren't moving in the best interests of communities but are focused on profit, are
yeah.
doing that as well. They're building a lot of power. They're sharing policies and practices to ensure that they are more easily able to take as much money as possible from working class, from Black and Brown folks, from poor folks, from people with disabilities. And so we, as Right to the City, are coming together to bring all those folks into rooms so we can develop some shared strategy together instead.
I mean, that sounds fantastic, Kamal, because if we're, they say that this is America's one of the most richest countries in the world. And we got people living under overpasses and under bridges and in trailers and in boxes. I mean, thousands of people. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want to continue the conversation with Kamal Walton from the Right to the City Alliance as we're talking about making houses affordable again. And I also want to get your take on it as well, Cruz. So make sure you post your comments in our chat as we're streaming on Roland Martin's YouTube page. Let's continue the convo on the other side. Stay with me. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
A lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. We've been talking to Kamal Walton, who serves as the Associate Director of Communication for the Right to City Alliance, which is an organization, a grassroots organization that's doing its work on the ground to make housing one of the many things that's doing it as it relates to environmental justice and other issues, but they're making housing affordable again. And so Kamal has just been breaking down what the landscape that we're currently find ourselves in this country. And here in Los Angeles, Kamal, it is funny that we're having this conversation today because they just voted, the city council just approved a rent increase, a rent hike of 4%. Let me just make sure I get all the details on this very quickly because it's something, because there has been a huge call here in LA for rent control. So the LA City Council, they approved limiting rent increases on rent stabilized units to 4% or up to 6% if landlords cover gas and electric costs. So that was a compromise because initially they were talking about even 7 to 9, maybe 10% increases in rent. And if you live in LA or if you live in California or any place in Southern California, you know that rent is already high. It's high as AF, right? And so we're talking about a city that has literally 40,000 plus people that live on the city, on the streets here in Los Angeles. 40,000. That is a small town for some places. And so when you're talking about this, let's talk about the power of the voter in this process, because the LA City Council had to do what it had to do. And part of the reason was landlords were saying, look, our operating costs have gone up, property taxes have gone up, all of this other stuff that's gone up. So we got to figure out how to get the money in from somewhere. But I'm wondering, do you think that political leadership needs to do more, especially as we go into this election season, this federal election season? What do we as voters need to do and say to political leaders about this issue?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when it comes to housing because it is a pretty universal issue, but it oftentimes doesn't actually come up in conversations when we're hearing the debates from different
Right.
elected candidates.
Come on, Kamal.
Um,
Right.
it's like we all need a place to live. We all need a place to stay. And I think in part that is because we can see the influence of the housing lobbies, the national landlord associations, the developer groups, um, and they make it an issue that people don't want to touch. I would say very similar to the genocide happening in Palestine right now. There are lots of folks who are very hands off about that as well. And these are issues that, whether we like it or not, impact all of us. And there are very clear things and concrete things that we could do to make housing something that everyone has access to. Um, and for Right to the City, things that we prioritize in the pushes that our members are making on local, state, regional levels across the country, prioritize things like community control. So, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act or Community Opportunity to Purchase Act um, legislation that isn't just the legislation with the symbolic win and it's like, ooh, this is great. Now renters can try to buy their buildings before their landlords sell it to big corporations. No, we also mean we want to ensure that renters actually have the funding to be able to do that. And we want elected officials to actually ensure that these policies are implemented with the communities that fought so hard for these things.
Right.
Um, we want renters' rights, and we want to take land and housing off the market. So many of the solutions that we hear from elected officials, from these big corporations and developers, are based on like market-based solutions. So we hear things about housing vouchers, or we hear things about like waiting for the market to do X, Y, and Z. When we talk about affordability, it's usually based on market rates of housing, without reconciling the fact that minimum wage anywhere in this country is not sufficient for
Don't get me started,
to
Kamal.
be.
Don't get me started.
And we know that that is because minimum wage is based on like the calculation that they do it based on the cost of food, originally back in the day, not the cost of housing. And we know
Mm.
costs have exploded over the last several years. Um, and so at Right to the City, with our member organizations, some of them are endorsing candidates, some of them are pushing forward different legislation, some of them are putting out ballot measures. Um, and I think we're trying to get more into the electoral realm with our work, but it is really important that whoever the people are that we're working with. And so for some of our member organizations, they've been doing a lot of work to build these relationships with folks, not just in the campaign season of it all, to ensure that there's like a relationship, accountability, and solid communication and coordination when we think about what it looks like to work with electeds. And I think even for the folks that aren't necessarily moving in our interest, we're clear that we don't want them to still hold those seats. I think
Right.
there are a
But
lot of
see, but Kamal,
opportunities. Yeah.
no, and I want to. You're right on point. I just think that you really do have to have a different shift in the mindset of how you see in this. Like you said earlier, you're talking about if we're putting, and I see signs here around the city that if we put this conversation in the context of housing is a human right,
Hmm.
not a privilege, right? Because that's where I think a lot of us are kind of stuck in, right? Like we're like, oh well, we know that homelessness is real. We see it, but we still kind of like been conditioned to believe that, if you work hard and do what you're supposed to do, that you should be able to get a home. not understanding the biases, not understanding the issue of redlining and gentrification, not understanding that you have political leaders who do not have the will to create community oriented, resident driven, do not these leaders aren't creating a space for that type of action. These leaders are still operating from the fact of old school views, capitalistic views of what housing should be, right? Not a nuanced view of community ownership, community land trust, not a nuanced view around the conversation about income. You just made an excellent point. Income is suffering. We're still making the same thing, same minimum wage from 20, 25 years ago when all the prices on everything has gone up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. And when we're talking about even the little hike of $15 an hour, that is still nothing. I mean, when you really look at it,
Especially when you only do it
$15
over
an
like
hour.
a 5-year time span, and you're like, we'll get up to 15 in the next 5 years. By the time we hit it, it's not even useful.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you're going back to, it's like 725 again. You know what I'm saying? So, and I know that there is an effort. Now we got to take another quick pause, but I know that there is an effort to get people out of office and everything. But the political leaders aren't talking about this, as you mentioned. Like, this is not a part of the national conversation. I know the Biden-Harris administration is doing a few things around this issue, but I'm saying across the board, how do we advocate for that? We can give you like 30 seconds for that before I take our next pause.
Yeah, so I think one of the ways that we advocate for that is through grassroots organizing and base building with local organizations. For Right to the City, even though we're a national alliance, we know the biggest transformations and shifts in people's everyday conditions has happened on the local level. So
Yeah.
if people don't feel like as individuals they can reach the politician that they want to talk to, I encourage folks to organize their neighbors, talk to their family, talk to the folks that live down the street from them, because we build our power by building relationships and coming together, and not just through like pushing one politician to listen to what we have to say. Because for Right to the City, the long-term goal is community control. The long-term goal is taking these things off the speculative market. So not making it a thing where people can flip their house and then make a ton of money and then flip it again and rent it out and evict someone and hike the rent. We want these places to be controlled by communities who are clear on what they need and who are organized enough to be able to maintain it. And the government still plays a role in supporting the infrastructure, in subsidizing housing, in making sure that it meets whatever conditions have been laid out. But we strongly believe in, and we are pushing for, and in a lot of places we are winning community control over land and housing. So it's not just waiting for elected officials to vote in our interests, but it's also us organizing and building the power to be able to control our communities.
Love it. Cindy D, you said your own country should be able to help you get a home and not tell you to pick yourself up by your bootstraps, i.e., Black people, you don't need governmental help. Do it yourself. I'm going to say this. I agree, Cindy. But guess what? We do need governmental help because they owe that to us. They owe that to us, right?
Yes.
The help
And the
that
money
they can
have is
offer.
our money.
And exactly. And the help that they can do is clamp down on corporations that is squeezing the life out of residents, out of potential homeowners. Clamp down on the banks.
Yes.
Especially who are providing interest rates that are just astronomical. Clamp down on that. Look, got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation with Kamal Walton and you. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been checking in with Kamal Walton, who is a part of the Right to the City Alliance. And this is a group of organizations and a group of grassroots organizers that is doing their part to make sure that they can change the dynamics of power in a number of different spaces. But we're talking about housing today and talking about the big picture of housing. But this is an organization that deals with community-based racial, economic, gender, and environmental justice organizations to build a more democratic, just, and sustainable community. And I want to clarify what Cindy said, because I misread, so I apologize about that, Cindy. But Cindy was making the point that when people tell us, Kamal, to pull up our own bootstraps, that i.e. that Black people, you don't need governmental help. That's the point she was making. So again, my apologies for misreading that, Cindy. But I push back on that. And I know that we are in this space as Black folks in this country, as we talk about those fundamental, addressing the fundamental grievances like reparations and some of the fundamental things that have kept us back as a people in this country. But I do believe that because we're in this space because the government has allowed policies to dictate the agenda. Government has been responsible for this space that we find ourselves in. Don't tell me to buckle up my bootstraps or to pull up my bootstraps.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the ones making the boot, and you're the one that gave me the boot, and then you finally giving me a boot. Now you tell me, well, why are you not wearing shoes? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's backwards. So no, the government owes us something. If we're not having a conversation about like you saying, like the work of RTTC, which is just and sustainable communities. Yes, if we're not having conversations about things like that, then what are we talking about? Then what are we talking about, Kamal? So I agree with you on that point, Cindy. Thank you so much. Let's talk about in the final few moments we got with you today, Kamal, the support of your organization. What do organizations do to address this predatory behavior, discriminatory practices that we see, and how do we start to get out of this economic space that we find ourselves in, where we don't have any sense of economic security, nor do we have any sense of housing security?
Yeah, so I think first thing I want to say is like when it comes to housing, we definitely have to be talking about reparations. And we also need to be talking about indigenous land sovereignty as well. But reparations for Black people is definitely one of the things that is a part of the conversation. And some of the solutions around the housing crisis as it exists now started with Black people. So I want to shout out the New Communities Community Land Trust that started in Georgia by Black people who were organizing to be able to have access and control over the land where they lived and made sustenance for themselves and their families. Um, and 50 plus years later, now this is very common terminology, but it started with Black people. Um,
Yeah,
I think for right to the city, when we're talking about what we want instead, there are a couple of like concrete things that come to mind, and we see our members doing these things all across the country. So we have examples of folks in places like Minneapolis who were able to organize their landlord to sell them their building, and now they're building out a housing cooperative out of a 5 apartment complex and really dope Black and brown organizing, multilingual organizing with the communities on the front lines where they are at. Um,
I'm loving
we
it.
yeah, and those are some of the same folks that were organizing in coordination and in coalition with the Black organizers from the Black Visions Collective, who were calling for defunding the police and investing in things that we know actually help our communities be more stable, like housing. Um, we also see folks growing out community land trusts and using that as a way to organize and build relationships with people across the communities that they live in. Um, we also definitely are digging more into some of the electoral terrain. We have members in places across the country, including a lot of folks that throw down in Los Angeles. So the Community Power Collective, Sage, Libre. There are a lot of folks in that area who do a lot of work around housing, and we're also really working to continue to bring folks together to share strategies, to share model legislation, to
Hmm.
share political education materials. Because the story that is told to all of us when it comes to housing is if you can't figure it out, that's your problem. If you can't pay your rent this month, Godspeed to you. But by the first, or at least the fifth, if there's a grace period, you need to put the money on the table. And we
Yep.
know that if all of our people came together and decided, no, this rent's not being paid,
Yep.
we would be able to make that choice. But that
Yep.
requires us to be organized, that requires us to be
Yeah.
coordinated, that requires us to have a strategy and a plan. And so, Right to the City and our member organizations across the country are investing in that on a month to month basis. So, we work with folks that do the renters' rights, which is the more immediate, like, how do we stop the impact of the
Hmm.
housing crisis on our people right now? And then we have folks working on how we develop our communities without displacing people. So, our folks who are building out alternative housing models in New York, in DC, in Minneapolis, all across the country. We have folks in Santa Fe fighting for 64 acres of land from the city to keep the poorest brown folks who have been in Santa Fe in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think for us, it's about not just building power on the local level, but connecting people. Because a lot of the housing stuff comes with a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment. Folks don't want
Yeah.
to talk about being evicted. And we also know the folks that are most impacted are some of the people who are already at the margins. So, like formerly imprisoned folks have a really hard time accessing housing. trans people whose identities don't match up with their ID cards and paperwork, undocumented people who are really trying not to have to interact with cops, whether it's ICE, the police, or other forms
Mm-hmm.
of state policing officials. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that is why we build a lot of our power through the assembly model. And that's very much inspired by Southern organizers from the 60s, from the 50s, and internationally as
That's right.
well.
Yeah.
And that is what we're building towards in February of next year. We're bringing together over 500 folks who are movement lawyers, who are renters, who are throwing down in mobile home parks, who are working class and poor homeowners,
Yeah.
and organizers, to build a long-term strategy in what we know is one of the most like pitched political moments of our lifetime, 2024. Who's on deck right now? Nobody we feel very excited about. And
Yeah.
so we're really trying to dig into what are the elements of this that we can control? What are the ways that we can be in coordination? Does that mean corporate landlord campaigns for some of these landlords who own apartments in like 13 different states? Is that one way we could be building power with folks? Ballot measures when we know that the elected officials aren't going to vote in our interests, so we put it to the people to move the policies that are going to be in their best interests. And then we also have a loan fund, and we're really building that out too, so that our members are able to, when they're able to get access to buying out a building where a bunch of their tenants are organized, they actually have the funding to do so, not just as a short-term thing, but to make it more of a model that can hopefully scale when the government starts running us our money, as they should, because it is ours.
Hey, look, come on. I know I got to take another pause, but I'm loving all that you're laying out, and I think, and I really hope and pray that a lot of our watchers, and I know my online culture crew, they understand the dynamics of this, because we have a cross section of different folks that are a part of the conversation here daily. So they're understanding this, that Black folks are in a time like this is a crisis moment, a critical turning point for us as a people in this country to make some very different decisions about what our economic, social, political future is going to look like, right? Like if we just go along to get along, if we just keep hoping and praying and wishing upon a star that government will see us, that the banks will show their benevolence. Folks, we can't, and this is something that I hate when people tell me this, right? Because this is one of the things that get under my skin, and I don't know if this get under your skin like for me as it does for me though, Kamal. When folks tell me you're working in a system and you tell me, well, that's just how the system is. We really can't change it. That's what the computer say. You want to piss me off? Give me no options. Like telling me that that's how the system is, as if people, men and thinking men and thinking women haven't designed a system to be that way. Don't tell me I can't accept no in a system or all the systems that we are part of in this country. You mean to tell me it could work for some and it doesn't work for others, but that's just how the system is? When you say, oh, well, can we pay rent? If you're talking about the rent situation, well, we can't change that because it's always been that way. But that means it's always been wrong. It's always been wrong. How about it? How can we have a conversation about the quote unquote exceptionalism of this country if we're not having a conversation about progress or bringing systems up to the interests and to the needs of the people? We still want to hold people back. We still acting like this is the 1950s in some cases, 1980s in other cases, the early 2000s. Things have changed dramatically for the American people in this country, especially for Black folks, and we know it. So I miss me with all of this system talk, like we can't change the system. That's just the way it is. Please miss me with that. Very quickly before we take our final pause and then this part of the conversation. Willie, big brother, you said the planet doesn't ask for $1 to cut a tree or to pick a fruit. Capitalism hurts humanity. Facts.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk.
And here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. At some point, Black folks got to have a very different conversation about economics and housing And it can't be waiting on the banks, waiting on government. It has to be something. If you're talking about power to the people, community land trust, you're talking about bringing folks together across the racial lines and ethnic lines and sexual preferences and all of those, and going across all of those barriers and say, what can we do to bring justice and make the situation right? That's a different conversation, but it requires a different shift of thinking. It can't be, well, this thing will never work. We haven't tried it. We really haven't tried it to the fullest extent. And if this won't work, tell me, is the current system of things that we are all a part of, is that working? No. No, and I think people are afraid to be honest. So I just wanted to highlight some of the things you're doing. Some amazing work come out, and I truly appreciate you. Lise, let's put up their website for Right to the City website, Right to the City Alliance, folks. They are doing incredible work around economic justice, housing disparity, environmental justice. Make sure y'all check them out. As you can hear, Kamal talked about all of the different opportunities that folks can be involved. And we truly appreciate you to join us on this conversation today, Kamal Walton. So thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. And more importantly, thank you for being so good for the culture.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it too. And Black folks wouldn't still exist in this country if we didn't organize to survive. And so I'm excited to be at Right to the City, where I continue to organize with Black folks, brown folks, working class and poor white folks, to throw down for our communities, because what we need is already in us and we just need to make it so.
There it is right there. Kamal Walton checking in as the Associate Director of Communication for Communication at Right to the City Alliance and a queer gender nonconforming abolitionist. Kamal, thank you. Folks, we got to take another quick pause when we come forward. Let's talk about the latest in that case around the 6-year-old shooter in Virginia and his mom. Wait till you hear some of the details about this and the fact that she got sentenced. I'm just going to share with you that conversation. I'd love to get your take. Stay with us. That's on the other side of the break here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Just had a fantastic conversation with Kamal Walton from the Right to the City Alliance. I'm really excited about the work that they're doing and, more importantly, introducing folks to a different understanding, a different way to address these longstanding systemic issues. And when you're talking about housing, we already know what corporate America is doing. We already know how the banks move. We already know that it's going to take government a long time to catch up to the changes that need to be made. So it's a slow slog with the government. So the work of empowering people, bringing people together, empowering people, and understanding that power is generated once we organize and unite our efforts, that's a different conversation. That's a different conversation. So I'm very grateful to the work of Right to the City, and especially when you're talking about empowering people and Black folks in this country, because I'm just tired of us being beholden to a system that don't give a damn about us. It just doesn't care about us, folks. So I'm at this point where I'm like, you know what? Let's figure something else out. There's got to be a new way, and I believe there is a new way. We just have to. We can't be afraid to think outside of the box. And we have all been conditioned to believe there's only one way of getting some sense of freedom, justice, and equality. There's only one way to getting equity. There's only one way to ascertaining power, and there isn't. There isn't. There isn't. We've been doing this one way. We've been trying to do things for a very long time according to the boundaries of this current system of things, right? The boundaries of capitalism, the boundaries of waiting and hoping that we can just put one person in political office and they're going to change the reality of our lives. And we've been waiting and we've been doing that. And we could still do that on the political side. We can have representatives, but that doesn't mean that we disavow ourselves from being a part of the effort to bring power to ourselves, to our families, to our communities. So that conversation definitely has gotten me pumped. And understanding that there is power in people, there is power in organizing, there is power in thinking that, you know what, it's not always about money. Making a buck, like Big Brother Willie said, the earth don't charge you nothing for picking a piece of fruit off the tree. In America, you get charged for breathing. In America, everything is a commodity. Everything can be bought and sold. Everything is market value. Your life, my life, our efforts, our work, our production, market value. We don't see people as people anymore. We see people as a means to an end. And that's so prevalent in our political service. That's so prevalent in our educational system. It's prevalent in our healthcare system. We don't see people as people anymore. It's a means to an end. So the end is money. The means is that how can I get the most money from a person? How can I use this person, dominate this person, control this person, direct the efforts of this person to get me more money? Come on. Come on. All right, y'all. So, you know, it's getting too much. It's getting too much. All right, let's do this very quickly because I got another guest that's going to be joining us. I did want to bring us up to date on the situation down in Virginia. If you haven't heard, the mother of the 60-year-old in Virginia, Deja Taylor, y'all remember this story. Her son, Deja Taylor's son, took her handgun to school and shot Abby Zwerner in his first grade classroom back in January, seriously wounding her. But now everybody was talking about gun reform, gun control, gun laws, and how did this happen? And this is a Black woman and a Black child, right? So everybody was like, what's going on? What's going on with this? They found, now investigators later found that nearly an ounce of marijuana in Deja Taylor, the mother's bedroom, and evidence of frequent drug use in her text messages and along with drug paraphernalia. And so with that, she was sentenced to 21 months in prison. 21 months for marijuana use while owning a gun, which is a federal offense, folks. That's illegal under US law. So Deja Taylor is now is going to be have to serve. She was sentenced in a US district court, and some people say that this is the first measure of accountability for the shooting that happened in January. A shooting that, even though it wounded his teacher, could have been a lot worse. Ms. Taylor is also facing a separate sentencing in December on the state level for felony child neglect, and the teacher is suing the school system for $40 million, alleging that administrators ignored multiple warnings the boy had a gun. According to U.S. District Judge Mark Davis, he handed down the exact punishment prosecutors requested. He said this case cries out for a sentence of imprisonment. According to the judge, he said there was a quote-unquote direct line between Zwerner's wounds and Taylor's decision to mix heavy marijuana use with owning a gun. And Taylor's son would never have obtained the weapon if his mother had obeyed the law. What y'all take? Talk to me, crew. Post your comments in the chat right now as we're streaming on Roland Martin's YouTube page. What's your take on this? What's your take on this? Yeah, Pastor. Brother Damon, yeah, face crazy. Crazy. So now she got to do prison. She got to be away from her child. She still got to face state charges. And they found marijuana while owning a gun. Do you remember this? The developments of this case was kind of like crazy. Like there was still a lot of questions like, how did he get the gun? Where was the gun? Like the gun was in a space where it wasn't like high up in the closet somewhere. It was like right there where the child can grab it. And the child had this mindset. So now we're starting to see that there were some things happening in the home of the child, which led to the child making that fateful decision to take a gun to school to shoot his teacher. King, you said, wait, they check parents' phones now in cases like this? Why wasn't Rittenhouse or Al Cracker enabling mom to jail? It's crazy. This is crazy. And I think that the conversation about guns, of course, now with this case, I don't know if it's going to be a part of the bigger discussion about gun control, gun reform, gun laws, or if there's going to be an effort now, and we don't know because the conservatives, they'll take something like this and blow it out of proportion. And even though we see this on both sides of the aisle, even though black folks and white people in this country and other folks all have been victims and perpetrators in this case, but they may use this case to create stiffer penalties. And I mean, on a statewide level, right? This might be used against the whole legalization of cannabis. It might be used in the in the conversation about black gun ownership. This could go a lot of different ways, but this sister here, obviously, she put herself in a very, very bad situation. Very bad situation. Big Brother Willie, you said that's stupid as how many kids of parents who don't smoke get their hands on it? Even though it was reckless, this was overkill on the sentencing. I think the judge, Big Brother Willie, I think the judge was thinking about what could have happened. If that little boy, I think it was a boy, I think it was his son, But if that little boy, or that child rather, would have killed the teacher and then shot some other child in the process, I think that's what Judge Mark S. Davis was thinking about. Like the magnitude. I mean, it was a blessing that no one was actually killed, but it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse. But the big thing is the judge coming to the conclusion that it was because of Deja Taylor's actions and her negligence that caused the situation. And I would agree because, again, the gun was in a place where a child could grab it, have access to it. It's we talk about responsible gun ownership, right? We're talking about taking out the bullets or locking it away or putting it in place where a child can't get it. Yeah. King, you said she got to take that lick because the gun wasn't stored properly. A detrimental mistake. Exactly. A detrimental mistake. It could have gotten a lot worse. So I don't know if we should be upset with the judge around this issue. Because if Ms. Werner was killed, if another child was killed, I look, in cases like this, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. In cases like this, I think about my own children. I think about my own children. I think about my 4-year-old. I think about my 10-year-old. I think about my own children because I know that if that situation if a situation like that, and God forbid it does, but if a situation like that pops up, man, I'm not thinking about, look, I'm thinking about justice, man. That little child could have killed somebody, man. Could have killed somebody. Willie, you said also with Florida law saying if you have a medical marijuana card, you cannot own a firearm. Tell that to the white convicted weed smoking felons with an arsenal. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Janae, you said the teacher was injured, but glad she gets to sue $40 million. Other threats happen on teachers and their complaints aren't taken seriously. But yes, some threats could be misaligned. Absolutely. Here's the problem, the part about that, then we're going to take another quick pause. Here's the thing about that, Janae. She is taking that 40 million because she was like, there were warning signs, there were issues. There was something along the way. If you're a child, right, and you're thinking about doing this situation, I mean, and I want us to think about this for a minute, y'all. First grade, what, 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old? They thinking about taking a gun to school to shoot the teacher? Like something is inherently wrong. Something is happening or has happened to that child, or something is happening in that household. I'm telling you, I'm not upset with this sentence. I'm not upset. I'm not upset, man. And I know it's as a sister, and I know it's but it's, come on, sis. Come on. No. Because if it was another child that was killed, man. Benny Hill, you said it's the weed and gun combo because this is a normal family court case happened at a member of mine. It's the weed and gun combo. You're right, Benny. It is the weed and gun combo. First thing, it's illegal to do that, to own a gun and have marijuana or have any other type of drug. But it's absolutely the weed and gun combo. Your mental faculties aren't there. You're not always present, right? Of course. Look where the gun was stored. Yeah. So I think this is an interesting. I think that the mother should get some real help. I think that the child going to need some help. The teachers are going to need some help. They even went as far as to say, as we close out this part of the conversation, that those in the classroom are still kind of recovering from what happened, seeing their teacher getting shot by one of their classmates. Like, the school community is going to need to do some real healing and to try to get the students back into a better space around this situation. But this could have gone left. It could have become very, very tragic. And I'm just glad that no one was killed from this, but she got every right. The teacher got every right to ask for whatever money she needs to ask for. No teacher should be afraid to do their job. No teacher should be afraid to simply speak up. And no teacher should have to be at risk from the bad decisions of parents that come into the classroom. Nobody should be doing that. Nobody should be doing that. All right, folks, look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about how we can even out the playing field for Black entrepreneurs. I'm going to talk to one sister who's been working in the space of equity and global economics and how she can give us some insight as to what we're seeing as being the landscape facing Black entrepreneurs. And more importantly, how can Black entrepreneurs navigate through the challenges of owning businesses in this day and time? Stay with us. That conversation is up next right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. And what a great, we've been having some great conversations today about a number of issues. So make sure y'all do your due diligence. Go back to our website at blackstarnetwork.com and you can download you can take a look at all of the past episodes. And even as we're streaming today, once the show completes, it will be uploaded and everything. But mostly, you can find that on our website at blackstarnetwork.com and on Roland Martin's YouTube page. and you can see the shows that we have done around the around a number of conversations. So big shout out to all of our distributors and to all of our media partners to continue to power us further in this movement. All right, now I wanted to talk a little bit about how we even the playing field for Black entrepreneurs in the areas of equity, investment, and making sure that we take entrepreneurship, Black entrepreneurship to the next level. So I'm very excited to have our next guest, Ms. Lakeisha French, who is the executive producer for the Green Project. She's also the founder of Preneurology Global and a leading advocate for equity in entrepreneurship. She has been doing global business development for a couple of decades, actually. And now she's taking all of the skills that she's learned, everything that she has gained from working in a lot of different business spaces, and created her own to make sure that the next generation of Black entrepreneurs don't have to go through what she had to go through. So, Lakeisha, I thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be in conversation and community.
Absolutely, absolutely. First and foremost, you have been in these spaces and you have carved out a niche for yourself to make sure that Black entrepreneurs are heard, are seen, are felt in a lot of different spaces. First and foremost, though, I'm wondering, and I'm very interested to get your view of this. What is the state of Black entrepreneurship in America right now?
The state of Black entrepreneurship is, from my lens, as a ecosystem builder for Black entrepreneurship, it is on an uphill. Black entrepreneurship is misunderstood. We don't fully understand the trajectory of Black entrepreneurship, but those that do understand it understand that we are outperforming our peers and our counterparts with our businesses and our enterprises. And so that's why you see the immense amount of resistance to access to capital and wealth creation, but Black businesses are performing at an exceedingly high rate. And that's been my experience being an ecosystem builder for the past 20 years and understanding the growth pattern and trajectory of Black entrepreneurship because the tools we have right now and the systems that we have been building within were not designed for us.
It's not designed for us. All right, so here it leaves that, and that's perfect because it leads into my next question. Because it feels like even within the Black entrepreneurship space, there's still a disparity. You have your high earning, high grossing Black companies, right? Companies, companies that have been started by Black people, and they work in they're generating a higher revenue, and then you have quote unquote mom and pop shops that have been established by Black entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
And I'm wondering, do we see, is there a space for both of these companies to come together? Because if you're talking about corporate America versus Main Street businesses, that's two different spaces, two different settings, two different goals, two different mindsets. So are you finding, or is that the work that you do, right, in being like right in the middle and bringing people together? But is there, are Black entrepreneurs on the same page in that respect?
I'm going to, in the spirit of your show and of this network, I'm going to answer this question in full transparency. There's only one goal and one path that all Black entrepreneurs and innovators and leaders, quite frankly, need to be on, and that is the path towards the future. And when I say that, I'm talking about Industry 4.0. When we look at technology advancement beyond ChatGPT, we're talking quantum computing, deep tech. When we look at the demographic shifts happening in not only in this country, but globally, by the year 2050, the largest concentration of young people will be on the continent of Africa. 1 in 4 of every human being on this earth will be of African descent by 2050. By 2045 here in the US, there will be a new majority. However, the Black community won't be the majority in that new majority, let's be clear. So when I think about Black entrepreneurship and Black businesses and Black innovators, which are 3 very different, distinct things, however, we all should have one goal right now, and that is to ensure that we are not left behind and that we're not letting us write our economic future before us. And so when you think about those more high growth, scalable Black businesses that have to transform and shift into the tech innovation economy, when you think about the mom and pop shops who have to shift and transform and pivot their businesses to ensure that they are relevant, we all need to be working together. When you think of the innovators who are creating the next set of technology, IP, creativity, creators, we all have a responsibility to be focused on the same goal and to ensure that we are creating jobs within our community. And so focusing on the future, and that's what the work that I'm doing right now after those 20 years of ecosystem building, realized that there was a bigger North Star that we needed to be focused on. And so that's why we launched the Future in Color Institute, focused on just that.
So, Lakeisha, you're basically saying that it depends upon where you come into the game. That you might be an innovator, you might be an entrepreneur, you might be a part of a high growing, fast growing, a high revenue generating company that's owned by Black folks, right? But you're saying that we should all be on the same page, and I feel like that's part of the missing part of this discussion, because when we talk about social issues and political issues, I think we're a little closer on the same page than once we get into the business space, it becomes like this other thing. And I know we got to take a quick pause, but I want us to kind of like I want you to help me to like debunk some of this myth that we have as we have these conversations about Black business, because people seem to believe that is the all in all. That if you want to feel, if Black folks want to get liberated, we need to have Black business. Everybody keeps saying, oh, we need to support Black business. But there is so many different layers to this that I feel like we need to like really talk about, which is the layer of, like you just pointed out, there are different levels. There are layers around the the industry that you're a part of. Like there's just so many different layers. It's not just, oh, we're going to open up a business and then boom, liberation comes to all. If it was that easy, we'd be free overnight.
Right. No, you're right. You're on point. You're right on point.
And the other part of it is the mindset. The mindset. You can go in with, and I'm going to use this term lightly, well, sort of, a white-mindedness. So you're like, oh, my business is generating this amount of money, and you become essentially a Black capitalist. You're like, oh, okay, I just want to do this for the money. Versus somebody that's opening up a business and see themselves as part of the community and in taking that little money and reinvesting back into the community. There's a different mindset there. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this with our sister Lakeisha French. And of course, with you folks, stay with us. The conversation continues on the other side right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're We're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. And we have been checking in with my sister Lakeisha French, who's the executive producer for the Green Project. She's also the founder of the Future in Colors and its associated IFC Labs, which is dedicated to accelerating equity and economic empowerment by 2045. There it is right there, folks. When Black and Latino communities are expected to overtake the U.S. demographic majority, Lakeisha's like, look, there's an opportunity for us to do some things differently. And I love the title of that of the name of your project, The Future in Color, because I think that is also the great fear that some white Americans have right now, that the color, that the future is not only bright, but it's brown, it's black. It's not just white. But let's talk a little bit about that. I want to certainly talk about that work. But I do want to debunk some of these myths, Lakeisha. You've been doing this now. You're in global. You're not just dealing with small businesses, which we often have these conversations about. It's like, oh, we need to support small business, which is true. But you're really dealing with very large, global businesses, companies that we may not even know are black owned.
That's right.
Black led. But you're working with these companies all the time. But to help me to debunk this myth that if we started to create more businesses, that we will be further along in terms of our social and economic progress, and even in terms of our political progress. Is that true?
No.
Wow. Wow. Talk to me, Lakeisha.
What is true is that if we own more, so there's a different, ownership and entrepreneurship and business ownership are three different things. And so what we lack as a community, when you look at the Black communities, the global Black community, not just the US, our contribution to sectors and industries, particularly what we have our eye on, are those that will create and transfer the most wealth over the next 20 plus years, and those that we have contributed to in the past. And so when you look at our contribution to, for instance, the music industry, sports, aerospace, clean energy, right? When you look at the numbers in terms of, if you break that down, how much intellectual property do we own, right? How many patents do we have? That is where because let's be clear, wealth cannot be created until there's an exit, right? So the idea of just starting businesses or becoming an entrepreneur is not enough to help us to, and I try not to say close the wealth gap or, look at disparities. I like to focus on abundance and not scarcity. We have enough. And I believe that if we focus on how we can accelerate, right, and the industries and sectors across 4 pillars: innovation, owning our intellectual property, patents, trademarks, ownership, right? More than one way to own, investments, and advocacy, right? Because we know that all of this, at the end of the day, it's not sustainable or scalable if we don't have the policies to support and undergird that growth that we experience. But simply starting a business is not going to be enough. And yes, we have a number of high growth Black businesses that are poised for scale. What we want to do is get those companies to the point where there can be an exit and there can be a transfer of wealth. But it's also important to launch new startups, right? So that there's IP, particularly in the technology state, that we want to own and have within our community, investments in emerging markets and industries, Black carbon trading, right? We're not talking about that in the Black community, but it's being talked about and discussed at very early stages. So these are the things, a number of things that we need to do. Assets under management. That's what we need.
And to some of our listeners and watchers today, Makisha, you might be talking Greek to them, right? Like this is that. I'm gonna keep it real, right? Like we might, because this is a different conversation, right? But I'm glad that you were at least saying, as a business professional, as a business development professional, you're like, no, that's not going to be the silver bullet to change the quality of life of Black folks in this country. And I wonder, what is the best mindset for any emerging Black entrepreneur to have? Should we have the mindset of what we have been traditionally exposed to? You create a business to make money, you sell that, you get another business to make another amount of money. Should it be just money or should it be service?
It should be value creation. At the end of the
Okay.
day, it's that simple. The businesses that are successful always like to use like the toothpick model, right? The person that created the toothpick, and has a patent on the toothpick. It could be that simple, creating value, whether you are opening up a laundromat, coming up with a unique way to wash a piece of fabric, whether you created a specific type of nail that doesn't destroy walls, providing value for people. And so focusing on value creation, that transcends race. It transcends a lot of different things, providing value and being able to exchange value from a human-centered space. And so it's important in terms of who we do business with. So seeking out those who want to work in the spirit of collaboration, want to create value together. So it goes back to like those old days of like, just, being, how can I say it? Not Eurocentric, right? So I think that mindset matters because we approach business ownership, entrepreneurship from a Eurocentric mindset and perspective because it's what's in the textbooks, and it's not going to work for us, right? Because that is not the spirit in which we exchange value, and that's really what business is. And so we need to start building models for investments, right? Investment cycles. Who's to say that a Black business's trajectory goes through the stages that current venture capital firms have set out? So until we start to both, dig a little bit to understand more historically and what the trajectory is, because Black business is not new. So there's information to be had there to begin to understand that. And then on the flip side of it is, what are the emerging markets and industries that we need to be building in? So if you're starting a business right now today, whether you are building a startup, a small business, a high growth business, look at what needs to be exchanged in terms of value. What's happening? What are the industries and sectors that are booming? What's the simplest thing you can create and do that's going to create value, that's going to make money exchange hands and provide that? And then you can start building and like you said, spurring up all the businesses, playing around, launching things. But at the end of the day, to create a legacy, to transfer wealth, to have an exit, to have an acquisition or a merger, we need to be focused on value creation and more wealth creation. And when I say wealth creation, I'll just give you a real life example. My first business was a summer camp business, literally. Like I provided youth entrepreneurship summer camps. I developed the curriculum and programming, owned all the IP, wrote it myself, locked myself in a room for almost a year, writing a methodology. And I went and worked with educational, centers and schools and things of that nature. and realized that I didn't need to become a nonprofit to be able to get my curriculum in certain places. And I also didn't have to charge people who couldn't afford the programs. I could do both ends, right? But I understood very clearly what the value proposition was and what value I was adding to the education system, to the board of education. So once I realized that, that's what I started building my business model around. And so now, like, if I run into a crunch or if something happens, because I own my IP and own those things, I can open up and launch several different locations, and I can, I have control of that, which means I have access to wealth creation. I have a wealth creation tool, as opposed to access to capital, which a lot of people want to talk about. But what good is access to capital if we don't have the collateral that the banks need in order to be able to secure the loan?
Yeah, yeah. And I know we got a couple of moments left, but even to add to that, what you just mentioned, Lakeisha, what's the good of having capital if it's not invested back into the community that your business is in, if it's not used to create some level of sustainability measures, right? And I'm not talking about sustainability for the business. And I think that's part of, you're talking about that different mindset. I think that's part of the process, right? Like you're saying, Eurocentric mindset. Eurocentric mindset is, hey, we're going to make money, and we're going to make a lot of money, and we're going to keep it for ourselves. That doesn't bode well. That's not in alignment with who we are as Black folks in this country. Right. Now, we can be conditioned that way. We see that. But I think that if you're talking about a Black business that actually adds value to the community, then you're talking about a Black business that is investing in the community.
Or better yet, and also a Black business that creates value to the world and puts it back into our community.
There it is. And that's a different level. And that's where you come in, because you are a global business developer. So you understand how to take a small business or take an idea and scale it out. Very quickly, we got like 2 minutes left, and I want to kind of give you a moment just to talk about this project that you're working on, Future in Color. Talk to us about that. What is this all about, Lakeisha?
Yes. The future is color. The Future in Color Institute is a global think to action tank. We are focused on the global Black diaspora, ensuring that, as I mentioned before, we are not left behind. And so we are building a roadmap to 2050 and 2045. So both domestic and globally, we will be launching our first initiative called the Global Black GDP, where we're actually calculating a global Black GDP. We'll be releasing a Black GDP report that will look at the economic contributions of the Black community across sectors and industries that are poised to create and generate the most wealth. And we'll be looking to have these value creation salons with industries and sectors to look at how we accelerate the Black GDP by 50% by 2050 to ensure that we have agency and are centered in this new majority in this Future in Color.
Is this a global initiative, and where we're looking at other, like the motherland, and we're looking at other places across the globe?
It's a global initiative. We will be starting. The first GDP report will be released next year, July, and it'll be U.S. based. And then we'll use that model and use the transatlantic slave trade map to go to the different countries to quantify the GDP. And at the end of the day, we'll be looking to accelerate the GDP, looking at the 20 countries that will lead in GDP by 2050 to make sure we're in those numbers.
That is fantastic. Janelle said, providing value, as we going back to that piece around that you spoke of, Lakeisha. She said, providing value should be based on collective economic development. Collaboration is key. You got to have a mindset to think collectively, right?
You have to have collective. I call it hyper interdependency. When people ask me how I'm working, we need to be hyper interdependent on one another. We have enough. And so we want the next manufacturing capitals to include a country in Africa, in Detroit, right, as the manufacturing center. We need to be looking at collaborations and collective action in that way.
There it is right there. Lakeisha French, who is a global business developer. She is also running a fantastic global project called the Future in Color. She's the founder of the Green Project. Folks, if you want to get more information about the work that Lakeisha French is doing and possibly can do for you, Lakeisha, how can they reach out to you?
Sure, thefutureincolor.org, or you can reach me on Instagram at Lakeisha French.
There it is right there. Lakeisha, I appreciate your time. And most importantly, I thank you for your contributions to do something good for the culture. Thank you so much, Lakeisha.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you, my beloved online culture crew. Thank you so much for checking in. Great point that you brought up, Janelle. So thank you so much. Hyper interdependent. Absolutely conscious thought. That's what I love. I love it. It's got to be next level interdependence among us. But she shared something that I think that is necessary for us. You're talking about a mindset shift in this whole conversation about Black business. I got to bring my sister back on because I feel like she can offer so much more as well. So we'll do our part to do that. But I thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Thank my fantastic production team for making today's show happen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, we thank the big guy, Brother Roland Martin. Make sure y'all do your due diligence. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on all social media, but please give something to help continue to power us in this digital movement. Tomorrow, we're going to have more conversation. Got my sister Corinna Denise that's going to be checking in, of course, and a whole lot more. So y'all want to make sure y'all tune in for that. But I thank each and every one of you for joining me for today's edition of The Culture. As always, make sure y'all tune into Roland Martin Unfiltered at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And never forget, and here's the other thing. Never forget, what's the saying? Man, it just completely trying to get things done. But I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure that y'all tune in tomorrow. And God willing, we'll reconnect then for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.